Most people think Japanese gardens are ancient, unchanging spaces, frozen remnants of feudal Japan. But that's a Western fantasy. The garden I'm walking through today tells a different story. This is Nakajima Koen in Sapporo, and it reveals something crucial about Japanese aesthetics that most people completely miss. The art of creating timeless beauty in modern contexts. The paradox. Here's what makes this place fascinating. Where I'm standing right now wasn't always a serene garden. In the early Meiji era, the 1870s, this was a lumber yard. Logs floated down the Toyohira River, stacked here to build a frontier city from scratch. Think about that. Sapporo itself is younger than the Brooklyn Bridge. And yet, this garden feels ancient. And that's not an accident. It's Shizen, that principle of naturalness with intent. The Japanese garden tradition isn't about preservation. It's about creating landscapes that feel like they've always existed, even when they're brand new. In 1963, landscape architects designed this stroll garden, what we call kaiushiki, around a central pond. They weren't copying an old aristocratic estate. They were building something entirely modern that speaks the language of tradition. But here's what they really understood. As Sapporo grew into a modern city, people would need this more than ever, not as decoration, as necessity. In Japanese, there's a concept called iyashi no ba, a healing place. Nakajima Koen functions as exactly that, a deliberate counterspace to urban intensity. The moment you step off the street and onto these paths, your nervous system registers the shift. There's a subway station right outside the park as well. So if you can imagine getting off a busy subway and then stepping into this surreal space, it's an incredible place. This wasn't all accidental. The designers created what we'd now call a wellness space, though they wouldn't have used that language. The stroll garden's winding paths slow your pace. The pond's still surface invites reflection, literal and metaphorical. The seasonal plantings anchor you in cyclical time rather than the relentless forward march of city schedules. Modern research on forest bathing, shinrin-yoku, confirms what Japanese garden makers understood centuries ago. Immersion in natural environments measurably reduces cortisol, lowers blood pressure, and restores attention. But you don't need to travel deep into the mountains. You need a space like this. Nature composed with intention, accessible within the urban fabric. The 12 lanterns. Here's where it gets really interesting. Most Japanese gardens feature 1 or 2 signature stone lanterns. This garden has 12. But these aren't random. Each one is deliberately modeled after famous lanterns from celebrated gardens across Japan. Kinkakuji in Kyoto, Kenroku-in in Kanazawa. It's like a curated survey of Japanese garden history, compressed into one northern park. The gardeners weren't trying to hide this eclecticism. They were celebrating it. This is a distinctly modern approach, creating a space that educates while it enchants. A living museum that teaches you the visual vocabulary of Japanese aesthetics just by walking through it. And here's why that matters for us today. You don't need centuries of history to create meaningful beauty. You need understanding of principles. The northern context. There's another reason I wanted to show you this garden specifically. Nakajima Koen sits in Hokkaido, Japan's northernmost main island. The climate here is closer to New England or the Pacific Northwest than to Kyoto. The plantings reflect that. Weeping cherries, yes, but also species adapted to cold winters and dramatic seasonal shifts. The designers understood that Japanese garden principles aren't about forcing southern plants into northern soil. They're about working with what your landscape offers. If you live somewhere with real winters, this is your model. Japanese aesthetics aren't geographically fixed. They're philosophically portable, layers of culture. In one corner of the garden sits Hassoan, a small tea house. This brings in the Roji tradition, the tea garden aesthetic of rustic simplicity and mindful transition. The path to a tea house is meant to be a purification, a shedding of the outside world's concerns before entering a space of presence. That's not religious ritual, it's practical psychology. The very act of walking this path resets you. But walk a few hundred meters away and you'll find Hoheikan, a Western-style wooden building from 1880, where emperors once stayed. Further still, there's Kitara, a modern concert hall. This is the real lesson of Nakajima Koen. It's not pretending to be a pure, isolated slice of old Japan. It's honestly modern, a blend of Western civic culture and Japanese aesthetic principles, created deliberately for public use. A creative refuge that honors both tradition and contemporary life. That Meiji-era sensibility of learning from the West while maintaining Japanese identity. It's still here, still relevant, still teaching us how to navigate being global citizens without losing cultural specificity. The Japanese concept of ma, the meaningful space between things, applies to time as well as physical space. This garden, barely 60 years old in its current form, creates a timeless quality not by denying its modernity, but by understanding what makes beauty lasting. And maybe most importantly, it reminds us that wellness isn't something we have to escape the city to find. It's something we can design into our urban environments. Whether you're a city planner, a homeowner with a small yard, or someone who simply needs to find calm in a chaotic world, the principles are here. Nakajima Koen started as a lumber yard. Now it's a place where people come to find stillness, creativity, and restoration in the middle of a modern city. That transformation from utility to healing beauty, from new to timeless, that's the real magic of Japanese garden design. And that's something any of us can create, wherever we are. If you want to dive deeper into Japanese aesthetic principles and how to apply them in your own life, whether that's designing your own refuge space or simply finding more Shizen in daily living, I break it all down in my book Shizen Style Flow and my weekly newsletter, Shizen Style Weekly. If you're looking for something more specific on Japanese garden design, check out my book, Seasonal Japanese Garden Design, the Shizen Style Guide to 4-Season Landscape Beauty.